Tonight, a bloody milestone. 5 years of war in Syria.
What we saw in Syria should shock the conscience of the world.
From civil uprising to IS and a humanitarian disaster.
This is SBS World News with Anton Enos and Janice Peterson.
Good evening. On the 5th anniversary of the war in Syria, Vladimir Putin has surprised the world by announcing the withdrawal of most of Russia's forces.
The pullout, which began this afternoon, was agreed to by Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and will begin as fresh peace talks continue in Geneva.
After more than 9,000 sorties and more than 200 targets hit, Russia's mission in Syria is coming to a close.
Считаю, что задачи, поставленные перед Министерством обороны и вооруженными силами, в целом выполнены. Поэтому приказываю министру обороны с завтрашнего дня начать вывод основной части нашей воинской группировки из Сирийской Арабской Республики.
The announcement was unexpected and has been welcomed with caution.
I haven't seen the reports, so it's hard for me to assess at this point what sort of impact this will have.
President Obama later discussed the decision with President Putin by phone. Russian airstrikes have been supporting Syrian ground forces for almost 6 months, allowing the Syrian government to recapture rebel territory. Observers say the decision to scale down may partly be fueled by cost or a desire to end Western sanctions. Either way, President Putin appears determined to end Russia's involvement in an ongoing war. Peace talks have resumed in Geneva on the 5th anniversary of the Syrian civil war.
من أن نتحقق من طبيعة هذا القرار لابد من أن نتحقق من ما المقصود به.
President Putin gave no deadline for the completion of the withdrawal and said Russian troops will remain stationed at a seaport and airbase in Syria's Latakia province. But the broader withdrawal could intensify pressure on Syrian officials to strike a deal with opposition groups. The UN's envoy to Syria says now is the moment of truth.
The only plan B available is return to war, and to even worse war than we had so far.
Russia's move ensures it will have a bigger say in peace talks, where the balance of power has shifted once more. Julia Calixto, SBS World News.
The Syrian conflict began as a popular uprising on this day in 2011 as the Arab Spring was changing the face of the region. A day of rage by activists, hundreds protesting in Damascus and Aleppo. They demanded greater civil liberties and an end to 40 years of rule by the Assad family. By October, clashes between government and defected army units were becoming a regular occurrence. Former UN Secretary-General Kofi Annan proposed a peace plan 1 year into the conflict. Just 2 months after it was launched, 108 people, including 49 children, were killed in what became known as the Hula Massacre. The ceasefire was a failure. Within days, the United Nations declared Syria to be in a state of civil war. The conflict moved into Damascus and Aleppo, and the country split along sectarian lines. Syria's largest city was left in ruins, and the world is left trying to deal with the worst humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The estimated number of people killed in the Syria conflict varies. The United Nations puts the toll at more than 250,000. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says it could be as high as 366,000. It's thought another 9 million have fled their homes.
To mark the 5th anniversary of the conflict, we take a rare look at life behind enemy lines. Reporter Clarissa Ward and Syrian filmmaker Bilal Abdul Karim have gone undercover into rebel-held Syria. And a warning, this report contains graphic images.
Moving through rebel-held northern Syria is difficult and dangerous. As foreign journalists in areas with a strong jihadist presence, we had to travel undercover to see a war few outsiders have witnessed. The city of Idlib is the only provincial capital under rebel control. This was its courthouse until it was hit by an airstrike in December. Dozens were killed. 40-year-old lawyer Talal Al-Jawi told us he was inside the building when it was hit. His arm was smashed, but he was lucky to survive.
The Russian planes target anything that works in the interest of the people. The goal is that people here live a destroyed life, that people never see any good, that they never taste life. This is the tax of living in a liberated area.
An hour later, we saw that tax for ourselves while filming in a town nearby. We heard the scream of fighter jets wheeling overhead. Moments later, a hit.
There was just an airstrike here in the town of Ariha, so we're now driving very quickly. It's not clear yet what was hit, but we are hearing that there are still planes in the sky.
Arriving on the scene, our team found chaos and carnage. Volunteers shouted for an ambulance as they tried to ferry out the wounded. A woman lay dead on the ground, a jacket draped over her, an attempt to preserve her dignity. Russia has repeatedly claimed it is only hitting terrorist targets. This strike hit a busy fruit market.
This is just a civilian market. This is not a military area.
There are no military installations here or anything. It's a market. Look, it's a market. A fruit market. Is this what you want, Bashar?
We couldn't stay long. Often jets circle back to hit the same place twice. It's called a double tap. Among the injured brought in, a young boy, moaning in pain. He died moments later. The strikes on Ariha that day killed 11 people, among them a woman and 2 children. Rescue workers wasted no time in clearing away the rubble. In this ugly war, massacres have become routine.
Powerful report. 2 women have risked their lives to show what life is like in the IS stronghold of Raqqa. They wore hidden cameras for the Swedish newspaper Expressen. They recorded a life under strict rule where women must always be covered, even on advertising material. You can see more of the remarkable hidden video on our website.
The war in Syria is driving the humanitarian crisis through Europe. Desperate migrants have been forced to cross a river on Greece's northern border in a bid to make it to the rest of Europe. The border has been slammed shut, but they're still risking the journey, fleeing the filthy conditions of their camps.
Thousands of migrants stream from a camp in northern Greece.
Please stop!
Across a river, they clutch their few possessions and struggle through. A rope helps some along, women and children carried from one end to the other. These migrants are risking their lives to find a way around Greece's closed northern borders. 3 people have now drowned attempting this crossing. They're assisted by aid workers, and this map, distributed in Arabic, is their guide.
If there was hope to stay in Syria, we wouldn't have come here and put ourselves through this difficulty. Our only goal is to go somewhere and find humanity, to be in a safe country.
We are done with injustice, frustration and misery back there.
Over the barbed wire fences is the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, the migrants' next destination as they search for a way into wealthier European Union nations.
We just want to go to Macedonia, then we think about what's next. We don't know what's next.
It's a border they're not allowed to cross, slammed shut in a bid to stem the migrant surge. But they're desperate to leave these squalid conditions. 12,000 of them have been living in this Idomeni camp, recently turned into a swamp following days of rain.
I've been here for 16 days. The situation is very difficult. We're sleeping in tents and it's too cold for the children. We have to wait in line for food. We have to wait in line for everything.
We've spent 10 days at the Macedonian border in the rain. We're living primitive lives.
At this border site, refugees are exhausted, tired and running out of patience, and it's now very clear that unilateral decisions of border closures is not helping everyone.
Some did make it through to Macedonia, only to be rounded up by the army and detained. But it hasn't deterred them. Day and night, the migrants attempt to continue their journey to safety, no matter the cost. Sarah Arbo, SBS World News.
Australia's Syrian community has slammed the government, saying it's taken too long to resettle refugees from Syria and Iraq. Only a handful of families from the incoming 12,000 have arrived in the country since December.
Coffee with a cop. Australia's Assyrian community shares stories with local police as their relatives remain in refugee camps abroad. 12,000 people from Syria and Iraq will be resettled in Australia over the next 18 months, but only a fraction have arrived since Christmas.
I'm annoyed and I'm upset.
Carmen Lazard has helped process almost 7,000 visa applications from desperate families. She's in the dark about the fate of those families.
Having over 150 people visiting me each day, you know, it's a bit frustration. Why am I frustrated? Because I have no answer for them.
Some anxious Assyrians say they sent their visa applications more than a year ago. Many of the refugees set to arrive in Australia will be resettled in Western Sydney, but delays due to thorough security checks have pushed that arrival date further and further back. Immigration Minister Peter Dutton has downplayed the delays, his spokesman telling SBS the processing of refugees from Syria and Iraq will not be rushed. It will take time to identify those most in need and then carry out the appropriate checks before they come to Australia.
I imagine from about the middle of this year we'll start to see a regular stream of refugees arriving.
Professor Peter Shergold is preparing for the refugee intake in New South Wales, an intake focused on ensuring the new arrivals quickly feel right at home.
We can help refugees who come here do what they want to do most of all, which is take control of their own lives, be self-reliant, get educated, get jobs, build businesses.
Community groups will play a pivotal role, a role they want to start as soon as possible.
I plead the government on behalf of my community, please lend a hand to these vulnerable people.
Omar Debaj, SBS World News.
The rest of the day's news is next, including another crucial day in the US presidential election campaign. We're live to Los Angeles.
Shortly, suburban street execution, a $200,000 contract on a gangland lawyer.
And later, the latest advice on food allergies, how you can prevent them in your children.